Thank you all for dialing in today. We are at the beginning of our summer season, and we've got another great program for a nice Friday night to start off our weekend. I'm Scarlett Word. I think I know everybody on the call at this point. I'm the program coordinator for the National Railway Historical Society's Washington, D.C. chapter. And as most of you know, our mission is to expand the public appreciation of railroads and their history through preservation and education. And this program is one of the ways that we do that. We have a lot of different programs. We own and operate the Dover Harbor, which is a restored Pullman car. We have the Franklin Inn and Collinsville Inn, a couple of restored bug cars. We have a railroad library in Bowie, Maryland. We have the Timetable, which is our most excellent newsletter. We sponsor participants to Rail Camp, and we also have a lot of different types of activities in the years, particularly when we are not in a limited in-person meeting situation such as now. So if you're new to DCNRHS and interested in learning more about any of those programs, you can follow any of the links in the chat. And of course, we'd love to have you as a member if you're not already. So we are ready to get started tonight. So on to the main event. Please join me tonight in welcoming our speaker, Mr. Charles Bogert. Welcome back, Mr. Bogert. He is a noted author and editor of railroad books and articles and has served on the boards of numerous railroad organizations, including the Midwest Streetcar Historical Society, the Hoosier Traction Meet, the Chassis System Historical Society, and the NRHS. He also serves as a conductor for the Bluegrass Museum and is a speaker for Frankfort Parks and Historical Sites in Kentucky. Mr. Bogert has a lifelong passion for his home in Kentucky and its many industries. Last spring, you may remember he shared with us his expertise on how railroads supported the Kentucky whiskey industry. Tonight, in a program that parallels what we're reading in the news today, we'll learn about the early 20th century supply chain for milk, as we follow a milk can from its origin in central Kentucky to the market in Cincinnati on the L&N. Welcome, Mr. Bogert. Take it away.
Well, thank you for that. Before I get started, I'm going to do a little safety message. Don't be stupid like me. If you go out rail fanning, tell somebody where you're going. When you park your car, take your cell phone with it. Don't leave it in the car. Don't decide to take a shortcut down the hill because you may go head first down like I did, bust a couple ribs, cut your eyeball, and do some other damage to your body. I am still recovering from that. That was 6 weeks ago. So don't be stupid like me. Be safe when you're around the railroad tracks. Seriously, I could have been laying there dead if I hadn't been able to crawl up that hillside because nobody would have seen me where I was. Okay. Enough about that. We're going to talk about a milk can going to market. This is the type of milk can we're talking about. The can that you milk the cow into. They have on them all medallions. We're going to be going to Tri-State Butter Company in Cincinnati. This is the medallion showing that they own the can. This is the medallion on the other side of the can. This is the can's registration number, 175. 100. It's going to be shipped by the L&N and the Kentucky Central. The farmer is C.C. Drake. His shipping point is Frankfort, Kentucky. His P.O. box is for Sales, Kentucky. For Sales is the neighboring community to Frankfort. Now, the average cow produced 8,000 pounds of milk per year. And out of that, you could get 360 pounds of butter. For every pound of butter produced, you also produce 2 byproducts, 18 pounds of skim milk and 3 pounds of buttermilk. The U.S. in 1920, which is what we're focusing on, produced 1.8 million pounds of butter, 4 million pounds of buttermilk, and 24 million pounds of skim milk. The creameries were really liked by the railroads because not only are you bringing loads into them, but you're bringing loads out, empty cans, plus the finished products of butter, buttermilk, and skim milk. So it isn't just a one-way thing like the coal mines, which where the cars went in empty and came out loaded. So half the time they weren't in revenue service. With a creamery, most of the time the car was in revenue service. Now, in 1920, Kentucky was one of the leading dairy producing states. We had 10,000 plus dairies in Kentucky producing cream for sale. There's a map, 1920, showing the herds in the United States. 1 dot equals 2,000 herds. I know New York was a big producer, and I know you got that big donut in there because that's the park up there. But you got heavy within Maryland and Pennsylvania. So there is major dairy product. So Kentucky is one of the major dairy producers. We drop out of the dairy business in the 1930s when price support comes for tobacco. So when you know that you're going to grow your tobacco, you're going to get X amount of money. They tell you how many pounds you can grow. They tell you what they're going to pay for pounds. So you multiply that price times the number of pounds. You go, oh, that's how much money I'm going to get at Christmas. Now, this is the L&N Industrial Freight Shipper book. I did follow Ann's advice. Instead of showing the page, I put a map in showing where these creameries were located. Now, this gives you a false idea. Just because there's a dock there does not mean there's one creamery there. There can be more than one. In Louisville, there was 8. In Newport, Kentucky, there was 3. Most of these areas had 2 or more creameries in them. I should say 2 creameries. The last creamery in Kentucky, Trout Dairy, up in Newport, which is up here, closed in 2015 when it was bought out by a larger company. Borden's, I think, bought them out and closed them down. The railroad publications of the day had a lot of information on milk plants. And I think if you look at the railroad magazines from your neck of the woods, you're going to see that they talk about locating milk plants by railroads. Because, hey, this is the way you move stuff. You don't have roads, so you're moving it all by train. Bowling Green, Kentucky, a dairy center. As I said, they have like 6 dairies down there producing various types of milks. A herd of 4 to 6 cows would produce enough milk that the farmer could daily ship cream to a creamery. The creamery paid once or twice a month. Other crops paid only once a year. So you can see how important having a creamery was, or dairy herd was, to the farmer. This meant he had cash flowing in, or more importantly, his wife did. So she didn't have to listen and complain that there was no coffee or sugar in the house or beer, and she had somebody to go and shop. Tri-State, which is located in Cincinnati, which is where we're going to follow this can to, paid on the basis of the can's butterfat content. Other canneries paid based on the price of cream. There's a whole litany of how these canneries paid, creameries paid, I should say. So I guess you, based upon your type of herd you had, you picked the creamery that you were going to sell to. Money for the creamery, as I said, allowed you to buy your coffee and other luxury goods year round. Milk money, egg money, it's the same term that you might hear farmers say. I remember when I used to go down to Indiana to stay with my Uncle Joe and Aunt Minnie. They had a dairy herd. They also raised chickens, and she sold fresh eggs. And she always talked about her egg money. And that was her pocket money to go and spend the way she wanted to spend them. A cream can, milk can, 40 quarts of milk, and weighs 80 pounds when full. So those cans are quite heavy when you go to move them. Cream cans were moved in passenger train service. Now, when you're up east, you got special trains moving them. Here in Kentucky, the L&N, the C&O, and the Illinois Central and the Southern just added cars to their regular passenger trains, the milk run train that stopped at every station, and loaded them with the milk cans and offloaded them. I put in the BM and the BMR designations. I was supposed to find a picture of them, and I couldn't. But we did not have those in Kentucky. Those are milk cars that ran up in the New England New Jersey area. Now, Tri-State had contracts with contractors who picked up the cream every other day. The contractor had 2 routes. So we came by your place on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and then started over again. So one of the things this meant was you had to keep your milk cool. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. This freight station agent, he had to ensure that the cans when delivered to the station were kept cool. So he kept them in the shade. And that generally meant he put them on the north or west side of the depot. And that's normally why there's an overhanging roof on the north or the west side of the depot to keep the milk out of the direct sun. Now, in hot weather, he put ice shavings on the lid of the cans. The cans we have here in Kentucky all have a depression in it. When I was growing up in Newport in the 1940s, we had an ice house. And I remember the refrigerated cars being in there, and they're not loading ice into the end of it, but they're loading stacks of ice, 4, 5 stacks, which is 4 or 5 feet into the cars. And later I learned that what they were doing was then hauling these to the smaller towns in Kentucky where the milk was delivered or where they had a general store. We didn't have electricity back then. Maybe you guys did up in DC. But here in Kentucky, a lot of our areas didn't have electricity until the rural electric co-op corporations came in, and they really didn't get going to late 40s and 50s. So we depended upon ice in the general store to keep your soft drinks cold, or for the local tavern to keep your beer cool. Here is a picture. These are the cans we have in Kentucky with the depressed lid. So you can put your ice shavings in there to sort of keep it cool. Okay, we're now going to follow a milk can from the farm to the creamery. Okay, guys, remember Mr. Rogers? You got to use your imagination. We're going to use imagination to follow this can. So please, let's use our imagination. We are going to start here on the farm. It's located between Frankfort and Midway. It's Mr. Drake's farm. He's going to bring it into Frankfort on the Kentucky Traction and Terminal Interurban Motor Car. It's going to travel by L&N passenger train service to Lexington, where the car is going to be switched on the train going to Paris, where it's going to be switched onto the train going up to Cincinnati. So that's the route we're going to take. Here's our can. So I said, there's a number. It's going by L&N in Kentucky Central, Mr. Drake, and he's going to ship it from Frankfort. Here's our route out here. This is the traction company, Kentucky Traction and Terminal. 1902, the Georgetown goes in. 03, the Paris. 05 to Versailles, 7 to Frankfurt, and 1910 to Nicholasville, and it all folds in 1934. Okay, there's our schedule. Here's the our farm, the interurban route coming in, and this is Louisville, Nashville route leaving and going over to Lexington. Okay, imagination. This is Mr. Drake's dairy herd back here with his barn. Another view of his barn with his dairy herd. And another view. He's got 3 barns. He's a big operation. There his cows are in. They're feeding while they're being milked. And there they are being milked by hand. I remember my Uncle Joe and Aunt Minnie when I first went down there, milked by hand, and then they got a machine to milk their cows. There they are. He's got to leave that milk for next day. So most of these places have spring farms with cold water running into it. And he's setting his milk in here during warm weather to keep it cool because we don't want it to spoil. He's now taking it down to the interurban imagination. And we're now down here at the end of his farm. Here's the interurban track. Here's the road. And here's Frankfort way up there. It's been a little bit warm, so he's wrapped his can in a burlap bag, which is soaked, and set it down there. The motorman on the interurban car isn't going to be too happy with this, but you got to do what you do to keep your milk cool. Here's our motor car, bluegrass route, coming actually from Elmendorf Farm. This is what we're going to be using to move the milk. We are heading in towards Frankfort. There is the track there. If you ever get to central Kentucky and you're riding on the road from Versailles to Frankfort, look off to the left and you can see the shelves there where the interurban used to be. We have dropped into downtown Frankfort. You're down at Main Street, and this is where the Y was to turn the interurbans. The interurban station is a half a block facing us. There is the interurban station with a Cincinnati curbside car there. These buildings still stand. This has been walled up. We are inside, offloading, and you can see here's our milk cans here. Got milk cans here. This is that interurban station. Here's the Frankfort passenger station, and the railroad track is on the other side. By the way, the Railroad Express Agency, REA, used to sit there where that parking lot is. Here's our L&N train schedule. So we're going to be loading our can on train 64, which is going to pull at 10:10 from here in Frankfort and run over to Lexington. We are down here in Frankfort. We're going to come up, swing up through 10 Mile Curve. It's a 10-mile curve, up Jet Hill, and on over towards Lexington. Here's our station master getting his milk cans together. He's put them on the wagon, rolled them down to the track, and getting ready. As soon as the train comes in, we're going to load those on the train. Aha! Hey, here on the train already, we got a can from Elmer Dryett over in Shelbyville. This must be a later can because the KC becomes part of the L&N. So we see it's just going by the L&N here. And we got another one here. This guy's out of Frankfort. It still says L&N and KC. It's Paul Kretcher. His grandson is a conductor over at the Bluegrass Railroad with me. We are inside the car. It's summertime. Here's the cans. And you see that ice that came from the ice house in Newport has been delivered to some of the stations, and they're throwing it on top of the cans to keep it cool. We are going to be leaving the Frankfort station here, going through the tunnel, through 10 Mile Curve, and up the hill. The station today is owned by the Kentucky Highway Contractors, saying, we've come through the tunnel. We're on the other side of the tunnel. A pause. As you know, there are no colored pictures. Colored pictures don't come along until the 1939, 1940. This is a black and white picture that was sent to Germany, and some artists in Germany hand-colored this, thinking this is what the place looked like. Okay. We have rolled out a little farther, and we're going past Spring Hill Distillery. Daniel Boone is buried right there, and Presley O'Banion is buried right there. Presley O'Banion raised the American flag at Tripoli, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Anyway, the Marine Corps has a big ceremony there every year. They just had it there last Saturday, I guess it was. The distillery's gone. The concrete foundations are still there. We're coming up the hill to Jet here. The depot was here. It is gone now. R.J. Corman, who now operates this track. It's strange. CSX owns the land here. R.J. Corman owns the track. And they just recently took out the depot, and he uses this for tie storage and other things back in here. We're over at Duckers, a little bit farther down the track, and there's Duckers. How many of you have ever seen the movie The Great Race with Tony Curtis, Natalie Woods, and Jack Lemmon. Watch it. When Jack Lemmon is the evil professor in his rocket-powered car that's going to go down the tracks, this is where it's filmed. Oh, they do some neat cutting to do this out. But what you had here was a general store with the depot in back of it. And it's all now a private residence now. We're going on over to Spring Station, our next stop here. We got our train with our milk rolling through the station. It didn't stop to pick up milk here at Spring Station because there's the freight depot. But wait a minute, he must have stopped because we got a can of milk here from Spring Station going to Tri-State, moving the L&N and the K and C. Huh. And there's our happy farmer who brought the milk to the station. There is the train station, now a house residence. There's the freight depot still standing there. Close-up view of it. Now this house is catty-corner across the street from the depot. And you're wondering why I put this in. This, from the 1880s to 1948, was the corporate, or let me repeat, the corporate headquarters for the Southern Pacific. Any legal document served upon the Southern Pacific was delivered here. In 1948, they switched to being a Delaware corporation. A long story, but this was corporate headquarters for the Southern Pacific. We're going on over to Midway, so-called because it was midway between Frankfort and Lexington. The Lexington, Ohio is the first railroad west of the Appalachian Mountains. It builds from Lexington to Frankfort. This was the midway point, and they named it Midway. They had to buy the farm. They platted it as a town. It is supposed to be the first town in the United States platted and with lots sold by a railroad. There is the depot in town. No, that is not the depot. The bank tore it down and then rebuilt the depot. Don't ask me why, but that's what they did. There's the track. That was an L&N caboose. R.J. Corman offered to paint it, and they repainted it as R.J. Corman. Okay. This is the McKee Monument in town. Colonel William McKee was a graduate of West Point and engineer. He was big in laying out railroads in Kentucky. He was one of the principal first people in the Lexington, Ohio, predecessor of this, became a colonel of the 2nd Kentucky and was killed at the Battle of Buena Vista. So the citizens of Kentucky put this monument up to him. The block here is still McKee block. We're over to Payne's Depot, next down along the road. There is Payne's Depot. Do you recognize it? Well, maybe not because they just took the track out. The opening scene of the Flim Flam Man is filmed here, where George Scott is thrown off the train with his suitcase. That is right here at Payne's Station. Yalton is our next stop here. There's our station. And there it is today. Remember, at all these stations we're stopping, we're picking up milk cans. We're over at Villy here. This is the Narc farm. Whoops, I went back. I went past. Anyway, that's the VA over here, I should have said. Narc farm was up here. That's where I go for my medical treatments. There is Villy. This was the first station to open on the Lexington, Ohio, and they had a great excursion out here for the 2 miles they had built. That's 152, the Kentucky Railroad Museum, running through. As you know, she's dead right now, and they're trying to raise money to rebuild her. We're coming into Lexington. We're going to be coming in here, pulling down to the depot down here. Cincinnati, New Orleans, and Texas Pacific here. This is C&O here. This is Lexington Eastern here. The Beltway is owned by the C&O, and the L&N going over to Winchester, and the L&N up to Paris. we're going to be going up to Paris. That was the oldest depot west of the Appalachian Mountains until about 30 years ago. In the name of urban renewal, they tore it down. Well, I can understand why they tore it down, but it's a shame. Wiedemann's was a beer from Newport, Kentucky. I worked in the brewery one summer while in college. All the beer you wanted to drink as long as you didn't get drunk. What a job. And they paid me too. The L&N and C&O Lexington Eastern Station in Lexington. The CNO and TP had their own station. They have detached the baggage car with the milk in and are now going to hook it on the train going to Paris, Kentucky. By the way, that's the depot today. Tore it down in the 60s in the name of urban renewal and put a parking lot in. View of downtown Lexington. Another view. Okay, we're on the Lexington section of train 36. We're pulling, and we're going to be running up this track to Paris. This track was taken out in 1952, so it's gone. Well, that's a lot. The track from here to Paris is gone. It isn't quite shown right, but the track from here over is still in place, used by R.J. Corbin. Okay, we are going to pull up this way, and up to Paris. Our train's going to turn here, come up here, and pull on up to the track to Paris. Here's an aerial view. This is the track today, turning on over to Winchester. This was the track that was taken out in 1952. This track was built by Maysville and Lexington back in 1858. This is Elmendorf Farm. We're going to be going by this. This is the largest dairy farm in the United States. It was a show place. Ran till 1914, I think it is, when Mr. Elmendorf died. I mean, when, not Elmendorf, can't think of the gentleman's name. When he died, his children didn't want it. And Mr. Hagan, Ben Alley Hagan, when he died, his kids sold it off. And see our track down here. Inside his dairy farm. Clean milk, tuberculosis tested cows, perfectly safe. This was a show place. U.S. government officials brought all kinds of people here. University of Kentucky Agricultural School really gets a jump start by using this place. Our next stop up the track is Hutchinson. This was the Depot General Store. It still stands. It's now a condo, 2 units. This is the track running across here. They keep talking about turning it into a rails to trail, but it's been cut apart by farmers along the way, so I don't think it's ever going to happen. We pull into Paris. We got, 7 minutes to detach our car and put it on the other train, along with a couple passenger cars. Here's the track coming up into Paris. Here's the track from Winchester coming up, the KC from Cincinnati to Corbin. That was the Frankfort and Cincinnati coming in. The track to Maysville swung off up there. TTI, and I forget who owns it now. Here we are looking at, here's that track that's now gone from Lexington. This track is still in place by CSX. The former Frankfort and Cincinnati coming in. And the Maysville line, which has been bought by R.J. Corman, and I forget what they named the railroad. Midwestern and Bluegrass, something like that. There's the depot as it was some 10 years ago. This was the Frankfort and Cincinnati line over here. That was the L&N line there. And this was the L&N line to Maysville, more or less. 152 is pulling in. Our train, as I said, is getting ready to pull. And we're now going to run from Paris on up to Cincinnati. Another view of the town. There's the depot as was. There it is today. It's been completely remodeled. It's a bourbon tasting, food eating place. They supposedly have over 200 brands of bourbon for you to taste there. They were putting in a smokehouse here. It's a very nice place to go and eat. Trackside, you can see most of the track is out. The former Frankfort and Cincinnati track's gone. This was the Maysville tracks, the Kentucky Traction Terminal. TTI track, and that was CSX mainline there. We are crossing Houston Creek, heading north. Another view of the bridge. Again, this is hand colored, no relationship to the true color of the train. Kaiserton's our next stop up along the way. We're going to stop here and pick up some milk. Here's where the depot was, right here. It is gone. There is literally nothing here. This was one of those rural depots set in the middle of nowhere for farmers to bring their milk to, for REA to drop things off at. There was, of course, a little stockyard here, but the station agent was basically in the middle of nowhere. Shada is our next little town up. It's here. By the way, we're running along the Licking River. We're basically either looking at the Licking River or within a half a mile all the way. The station sign has been saved. That was an L&N track worker's house there. There's our farmer who's brought some milk to the depot. And this is where the depot was. The road leading up the depot in here. Other farmers would have been bringing it in. The L&N track worker's house is to the rear of the photographer, namely me. We're come up to Lair, our next spot along the way. Here. There was, over in here, a large distillery. And so this was a major shipping point till the 1920 when the Noble Experiment went into place, Prohibition, closed down. So Lair Depot, this was the depot, a drawing of. And I wanted to put this in because we are a Jim Crow state. Separate Coach Act is passed in 1892. So we got to have separate waiting rooms. And this becomes very interesting because there's a lot of criticism of railroads in some of the major towns thereafter about what lousy depots they had. And it took me a long time to find out what was happening was. What happened is Falmouth, Cincinnati, and some of the other towns, they had a general waiting room and they had a ladies' waiting room. When the Separate Coach Act came in, they converted the ladies' waiting room into the Negro or the colored waiting room. And the ladies now had to stay in the general waiting room. And this did not go over too well. So if you see Kentucky Railroad Commission documents from the 1890s on forward, there's constant complaints about citizens about their lousy depot. And you sort of look at the depot and say, it isn't so lousy. Well, the problem is the ladies have to do the general waiting room. Okay. This is where the depot was. This is a later building. They had a bulk plant here, LP gas. I said it was oil too, and then I remember it was an LP bulk plant back in here. It's closed down now. Interestingly, in 1864, the train is stopped here by Confederate guerrillas. I think they're just guys dressed as Confederates. On board the train is Montgomery Blair, U.S. Postmaster General under Abraham Lincoln. Nobody ratted on him. Nobody told the guerrillas who were robbing everybody, hey, there's Lincoln's Postmaster General sitting back there. It says something about integrity within Kentucky. Put this card in. If you are a card collector and you're looking for cards of depots, you will often find that there is no picture of the depot, but the depot where there's these little towns, there'll be greetings from the town with some sort of picture in the background. These are generic cards that the station master would buy to sell by himself to make money. and he would just have stuff like this put on. I got a number of them for depot towns in Kentucky that I couldn't find any picture for. We're pulling into Cynthiana. There's the fairgrounds over there. We're coming to Cynthiana. There's the station back there. There is our station. A very nice station. Lasted up to the 1960s when it got tore down, sitting right there. Cynthiana is a strange place. In June of 1864, John Hunt Morgan, the Confederate general, and his raiders captured the town, killed a bunch of citizens, burnt part of the town down, and every year they celebrate. John Hunt Morgan raided our town, killed a bunch of our people, and burnt part of the town down. Weird. Kentucky, if you don't know it, joined the Confederacy in 1866, the year after the war was over with, when we all became a heroes to the lost cause rhetoric. Okay. This is Keller's Bridge. Morgan captured a trainload of Union soldiers here. They were raw recruits with guns that didn't work. And when his men captured them and got the guns, they threw them all in the river here. They were useless. Morgan is caught napping here by Butcher Burbridge. Butcher Burbridge, you know he's got to be Union general, who defeats him, and Morgan pulls out of the state. But most of his men remain back, and Kentucky goes to downhill quickly with all the robbery and looting going on. And we get our famous saying in Kentucky that we still have today: thank God for Louisiana. It means we're only 49th on the list. Louisiana will fill the bottom of it. There's the National Railroad Association's excursion train out of Cincinnati. What was it, 1990 something or the other? They had the convention in Cincinnati. Poindexter's our next town up the track. Once again, we're picking up some milk here. There's the Poindexter station. You go with what pictures you can find, guys. You can't always find good pictures. There's the station right here. There was a road that came up here that you could come up here, and some farmers put a poles in here with a wire across. A couple other places I've run into this recently where you used to be able to get back to the track, and it's not the railroad that's put them in. It's farmers who put them in. I don't know what's going on with this whole thing. There's what's little of the town over here. The general store is closed, and there's about 8 to 9 houses still there. Robinson's our next town up here on the Licking River. There's our depot. Child saying there. Our station master there. Railroad Express Agency. And here's the depot today. The general store, gasoline station is closed. There was a store here that's closed. And there's about 2 houses left in the town. That, by the way, was a tobacco barn. It's all black. You can't see it. It's got slats on the side to open up and weather to allow breeze to blow through. This was a tobacco barn also, but you can see there's a small bump out here. And what they would do is they would burn wood in here and smoke cure the tobacco. This is smoking tobacco, cigarettes. This is cigar chewing tobacco back in here. Except we don't grow much tobacco in Kentucky today. Price support's gone. If you drive in Kentucky and you see a field of tobacco, some tobacco company has planted the farm, paid the farmer to plant that crop. They're all pre-sold. And here's another one of those typical greetings from one of those towns. Like I say, I got numerous ones like this of these little one-horse towns. Barry's our next town, located on the Licking River. It floods almost every year. And you got to feel sorry for these towns. What really happened was US 27 is built a mile to 2 miles to the east. And then they come along and build I-75 2 to 3 miles to the west. So all these little towns are just drying up. There is the depot in Barry. Here's where it was here. I was there a couple weeks ago. CSX has taken that track out. The post office is still there. The bank that was here is closed. And by the way, they recycle. This is the recycling thing. It said plastic and aluminum only on it. Boyd's our next town. Once again, I'm reiterating, they are picking up milk at all these places. Once again, we're right near the Licking River. 2 dogs have turned out to greet me. The depot was here. The general store that was here and the store that was, no, that was the general store. That was the farm supply here, are both closed. The school is closed and the gasoline that station that's out here is gone. Kentucky has put money in every year to go out and clean up abandoned gasoline station, tear them down and dig up the fuel tanks and remediate the area. So that's why when I say gasoline station, you're used to seeing an abandoned one. Kentucky's been fairly good at cleaning out abandoned gasoline stations. Morgan's our next town, once again on the river. This was the depot here. That was the federal building in Morgan. It was the post office. It burnt about 15 years ago when they tore it down. So Morgan doesn't even have a post office anymore. Another tobacco barn over here. This was a farm supply place. It's now closed. The general store back here is closed. The school's closed. A litany of stuff that's closed. Falmouth is our next town up here. Falmouth was about 30 years ago, almost 3/4 of the town was flooded. FEMA offered to buy them out and they said no. And FEMA said, well, guys, hey, the next time you flood, don't expect the federal government to come here and help you. So I don't know what the story is going to be. Here's the depot. Where's Operation Lifesaver? Kids sitting on the track. That's where the depot was. We still have a small tank operation in town. I threw this in because up until 1932, I think it is, until the point that Roosevelt had him take us off the, you couldn't have gold in circulation. Banks, if they had gold, could issue their own federal currency. And that's what this has. That means the banks got their own gold deposit and they're issuing their own bills. It's a US bill, but you could bring it to their bank and redeem it for $5 in gold. Butler's our next town. Once again on the Licking River. Most of it was destroyed in the big flood about 25 years ago. And a good portion of the people allowed FEMA to buy them out and tear their houses down. There's the depot. There's the site of the depot. The post office is still there. The bank is now closed. That's the general store restaurant. And over here, they have a fertilizer plant. This is basically all that's left of town. The school is now closed. They closed the school and converted the school into a senior citizen living quarters. Morning View is our next town up the track. Our depot here, the overhang to protect the milk, and you barely see the milk cans sitting there. Here is the depot. That's what's left of it. We're looking north towards Cincinnati. You ought to go out with me sometimes when I do this with my wife and listen to her say what I'm going to do to her car. Hasn't happened yet, but I guess one day I'll put that scratch in. Latonia is our next stop up. Latonia is where we're coming up. The Kentucky Central went on up here and ended in Covington. They wanted to bridge the river in Covington. In Covington, the Teamster got it blocked. So the Kentucky Central came up, built over to Wilder through Newport into Cincinnati. This line here is the line from Lexington. The short line is called because it made the distance from Louisville to Cincinnati shorter. The railroad calls it the LCL. That's the Cincinnati Exposition Rail Park. This is the Corsi Yard down here. So we're going to come up here and we're going to swing off over here. Aerial view of it. The depot sat there. The L&N Northern Kentucky office building was here. As you can see, the track went across here at one time and the track swung here at one time. So if we came up this way, we'd go down to Louisville, went that way to Corsi Yard. This way up to Queensgate. This way we're going to go over to the Pennsylvania Yard, Oasis Yard in Cincinnati. Here was the depot at Latonia. They tore part of it down and then CSX put all their equipment in here. It caught on fire somewhere around 1995, if I remember correctly. And they had to bring in some men and have them stand there, officials, and hand signal trains through this crossing for about 2 days till they got the signal system back up. Here we are looking, Cincinnati that way, track to Wilder that way, track that way to Louisville, to Corsi Yard in back of us, looking out over the bridge into Wilder. This is a large steel mill over here, which closed down in February 2021. And I don't know if it's ever going to open. The L&N Freight Northern Kentucky headquarters was there. Okay, we're over, coming through what was the steel mill here. There was steel mill from here all the way down through here. Here's our L&N train. It went into the yard, but we're going to swing up here, swing down Saratoga over to Cincinnati, Chesapeake and Ohio coming in here. C&O had a yard there, over here, and Cincinnati Union Terminal is up there. And that's the Cincinnati, New Orleans, and Texas Pacific. You most probably know is Norfolk Southern. We're in Newport. That's all gone, people. As a kid, I remember it. It's gone. Nothing there. Here's the L&N track. Here's the C&O track. Up here's the Newport Depot. This is the wagon bridge. It's now a concrete bridge. But if you're in Newport, Kentucky, and somebody says, take the wagon bridge, you can go, I know what that is. That's this bridge here across the railroad track. The pedestrian bridge down here, CSX in their wisdom took out of place. It connects the hill here to an elementary school. Why would you take out the pedestrian bridge? I have no idea. But I tell you, if you go there, you'll see the path the kids have gone down the hill and go across to the school. I don't know. Makes a lot of sense. We're looking up. Here's the L&N track coming across. This is NX Tar. I spent many enjoyable day there as a kid up here throwing the Armstrong levers, ha, 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 turning signal lights. I mean, they left me do everything. And when I was bored here, I was over here in the caboose, riding around with the local switching crew, switching town. The C&O yard was back there. This was Wiedemann's Malt House, which was a local brewery. And the depot is right here. What I want you to notice is the depot is aligned on the L&N track, not on the C&O track. Because here we're on the other side looking back. You see the depot, the Newport Depot, it's gone, is aligned with the L&N track, not with the C&O track. And even though the L&N track was single track, and this was C&O, and by the way, we had the Fast Flying Virginia and the George Washington coming through, plus a couple milk trains. The depot was not signed for the C&O, and that was because the L&N was here first. And there's NX Tar, that's pedestrian crossing, and the wagon bridge back there. Here's what it looks like today. Here's at Wilder. It went across here, crossed Mama Street, went up here, and turned down here. This was Trout Dairy, which is all closed down now. Here we are. It's a bad picture, but we're looking down Saratoga Street, going over there. Right here is where I went to school. St. Stephen's. I'm a Catholic boy. Let me tell you, you looked out this side of the school and you saw the L&N railroad tracks. You looked out the other side of the school and you saw the tracks of the Cincinnati, Newport, and Covington streetcar line. I asked, what more could a kid want in life? One direction, the railroad, the other direction, the streetcars. Number 11, Fort Thomas line. Here's a transfer coming up out of the Oasis yard over here. We're coming down through Newport. This is all gone now. And the Hofbrauhaus. If you like good beer and good German food and you're in Northern Kentucky, come over here to Newport to the Hofbrauhaus. You know, maybe playing some Oompa music, and you're going to have some good German food and some good German beer. Another view coming up. This is a view of the bridge. This was for cars. This was for streetcars coming from Cincinnati. This was L&N train going across, and that was the streetcars coming the other direction. We're coming into Cincinnati. Now, this map really doesn't show it, but this is a 90-degree curve here. I'm not lying to you. It's a 90-degree curve. I saw it many times. It's a right angle turn. Actually, it was one of the sharpest turns you ever wanted to see. They dropped speed down to at least 5 miles per hour going through there. Every once in a while, they would flop a car off. In general, it was an empty car that was trapped between loaded cars. And you know that going through the curve would pick it up. The Pennsylvania and the L&N depot was here. This was Grand Central Depot up here for the other railroads, and they will put Cincinnati Union Terminal up here. All this has gone through here. This is Brown Stadium, and this is Great American Ballpark, and that's the hockey arena, and this is Sailors Park, a Riverside Park. There is the Pennsylvania L&N Depot. Another view of that curve. And Tri-State sets right here. Here's the milk cans being offloaded. Another view of milk cans being stacked. We're using our imagination, right? They've been brought over to the creamery, been offloaded, and they're going into the creamery. Whoa, I guess we took a little break. There are the cans coming in, being poured in to be weighed. Must have been a very labor-intensive process. Here the cans are being washed. They are washed in cold water. You do not use hot water. If you use hot water, you're going to set the scum in the can. You don't want to set the scum. You're going to use cold water to wash the cans out. Remember that. Always cold water to wash the cans out. If you got a wife like I have who likes hot chocolate and she likes to heat her milk in a can and a pot, and then I got to scrub the pot out. Okay. I do the dishes. She does the cooking. That's the job around here. We've converted a bunch of the milk into butter, and we're loading it on board a train, Lands of Lake butter, and other types of butter. Now we're going to depart back to Frankfort. This is a view from up in Cincinnati. This is Oasis Yard. The right there is where the depot is. Loaded empty cans being loaded on board the train. We're departing for Paris, the Lexington section. We've gotten down to Paris, where the car is being cut off with the empty cans on, be put on the train to Lexington. We're leaving and we're going down to Lexington. We're at the Lexington depot, where the car is now being cut off the train from Paris to Lexington and being put on the train from Lexington to Frankfort and on to Louisville. We're going to arrive in Frankfort at 5:45. It's going to be put on the Kentucky Traction and Terminal car at 6:23. And there is the depot where it's been offloaded from. There's our freight motor. It's been put on to take back out to Mr. Dean's dairy herd so he can milk his cows and fill it again. And there's his lovely wife. They finally got some automatic milkers to milk the cows. And thank you for joining with me on this journey of watching a milk can go to market and come home, and see you again sometime trackside. Now, I am going to try to bring myself up, and there I am. And if you guys want to beat me up with questions and things like that, Scarlett, you can unmute them and let them go at me.
Okay, I will actually ask Ann to do that, and in the meantime, I will give you a couple that I've gotten in chat. Let me just get these to where, there we are. Okay, beginning where we left off. So were there men who stayed, whoops, hold on.
Yeah, there was an express car agent who stayed with the milk cans the whole way. That was his job, to stay with them, make sure they were kept cool and that they got because like I said, you're constantly loading milk cans on board the train. And when you're on your return trip, you're constantly offloading loaded cans. So yeah, you got one guy who rides the train. And the best I could tell was you had one guy who went from Cincinnati to Lexington. That was the end of that run. And then there was a guy who rode the train from Lexington to Louisville, the 100-mile trip that you were allowed to make under union rules in those days.
So this is kind of something I was wondering. Someone noted that it was amazing how they could keep the milk from spoiling by determining when and how much ice to apply. Can you talk a little bit more about where they got the ice and how they managed
Well,
that?
yeah, if you look at most of the farms in central Kentucky have a spring house with cold water. Now it does become and generally we don't have a drought, but we have it every once in a while. So that's why you wind up with that ice being shipped out, or you have them with their big tubs of water. I can remember my Uncle Joe and Aunt Minnie. They had what I would call was a big metal horse thing for horses to drink water out, except they just had it filled with water, and they would put their milk cans in there. Pack when they were going down there, it was being loaded onto a truck. But I can remember them. It was always, they milked twice a day. I wouldn't want to be a milk farmer. And they had a deal with their neighbor that when he went into town, they milked his cows. And I see why we don't have milk farmers anymore. It was a very labor intensive job you tied there. But yeah, I remember him with that big thing filled with water that he would put the cans in to keep them cool. Not cold, but at least cool. And like I said, I remember the ice house in Newport shipping all that ice out, particularly in the summertime. And then I found out what it was being used for. And us kids would go up there and pick the ice up off the ground, knock the dirt off of it, and lick on it to get cool. We didn't have air conditioning back in that day. Okay, next question, if there's a question.
Yes, I have one more. You showed us a lot of different milk cans. Where do these museum pieces reside today? Are they online or at brick and mortar sites?
Milk cans. There is a collecting community that collects milk cans. And we had one, and my wife made me get rid of it. Too much junk around the house. You can only keep so much. Anyway, say it so. We have over at the museum some of the milk cans. I know some of the other ones have it. There apparently isn't anybody who's really gone out and done any that I can find real look at these milk cans on those medallions on the can that I showed you. Because I've seen other cans. Carnation had a large plant in Maysville, Kentucky, where they made condensed milk. And they had milk cans with their medallion on it. And I've seen medallions for the couple of creameries in Louisville. So I have yet to come across a book that tells you who all these creameries were and where they were. And if you get yourself one of those freight books for one of the railroads, generally from the 1920s or so, you're going to be amazed at all the creameries that are listed within those of, this milk, because it is a major cash crop for most of the farmers.
Well, thank you. I feel like we could go on for hours on the history of some of these things. With this program on milk can, we've gotten not just the history of the milk cans, we've gotten the art of the postcards, we've gotten the transportation and industrial history and the change along the lines, and a bonus safety plug. So it's been quite the evening. I think that brings us to the end of our time and to the end of the presentation. And I just want to thank you again for another really fascinating programming, taking us on a trip with you tonight. We are at the end of tonight's program. I just want to thank you again one more time, Charles, for a fantastic program, and thank Ann Mason and Gary Goldsmith, who have been doing the magic behind the scenes. And thank you all for being with us tonight. And I look forward to seeing you again next month. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for
Hope you
having me.
get out and get in Kentucky soon.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
give me a shout. if you
I
get
will.
here.